misogynist, transphobe, racist, fascist. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and the rest of you. This is Jolly Scholar 888 with my Useless Eaters, Part 3, Planned Parenthood and Transgenderism. It's really the Eugenics and Global Socialism. Now, as you can see, I'm shooting the video from inside my RV. I'm in the co-pilot seat. This is really a very serious video. Even though I'm smoking a cigar, I just want to emphasize that. Because this discussion, the last two in this, my series, Useless Eater series, they were preludes to this one. Planned Parenthood and Transgenderism, Eugenics and Global Socialism, right? But many questions have come up along the way as to how should we define the term eugenics. This point was brought to bear especially well by Oliver Perrin, aka Semyagog, in our last two live streams. If eugenics is any human self-guided evolutionary project, if all human culture is a natural attempt towards producing a certain human type that embodies the values and aesthetics of any given people, then what is the issue with a specific manifestation of a socialist state eugenics project? If eugenics is simply defined as self-directed human evolution, then what's the issue? The best way to answer that is to simply reveal to you what is in fact going on right before us in plain sight, the current state-run eugenics project. And then, once we've looked at that, we'll come back around to answer the original question. Is this, the current eugenics project, any different from any other form of natural cultural eugenics? And even if it's not, what is the problem? But I will ask you, dear viewer, to simply keep in mind these two related, yet perhaps very distinct eugenics models. The first is the traditional grassroots bottom-up cultural evolution. It produces class structures and identities, from laborers, slaves, merchants, warriors, to aristocrats, kings, and even divine rulers. Values, identities, aesthetics, and social structures, as well as a certain type of human, with specific characteristics, comes into being. With whatever problems you may have with class structures, and this is a whole different discussion, divine kings, slaves. Nonetheless, I've pointed this out, aristocratic culture, traditional cultures brought us to where we are, and now we are redirecting ourselves, as was always the case. The second is the socialist state's top-down eugenics model. The traditional cultural processes are replaced by eugenics program designed and carried out by a bureaucratic state of absolute power. This is accomplished by either direct revolution or slower progressive approach. Once in power, the bureaucratic state initiates a top-down re-engineering of the population, both socially and biologically. The state project replaces all previous cultural and social values and all previous social structures with the ideologically driven agenda. But is the socialist state approach to eugenics necessarily a problem? That's the issue. How do we evaluate that? Well, we can start by just looking at the emergent state eugenics as it is unfolding right before us. Oh, you didn't realize that there was such a project going on? Well, maybe that's very instructive. Okay, so we start with what is obviously a hostile organization towards Planned Parenthood. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that what they're saying isn't true. And the Heritage Foundation I found to be extremely accurate. So, new report shows Planned Parenthood has raked in $1.5 billion in taxpayer funds over 3 years. That's about $550 million. Now, that's just direct government funding. I've looked at a number of sources, and it's huge. It's much closer to $1 billion in total revenue a year. Now, all of a sudden, here we are, Planned Parenthood, and we have LGBTQ plus care. All right, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Nice flag, two ladies, semi-interracial. Fine. Okay, so what? But how did we get from abortion and women's health to Well, what exactly is the connection here? I mean, it's, sexuality, arguably. It's a pretty loose connection, isn't it? Nonetheless, okay, so they want to have special care for LGBTQ ad nauseum. But this should alert you something. Like, where do you think this is going? So here we are, Planned Parenthood. And it's called Transgender Services. All right, so, I mean, you can rationalize it somewhat with sex. I mean, you start with abortion. Okay. Women's health, I guess. All right. And now transgender health, transgender services. Healthcare that affirms who you are. Now, see, that starts to sound a little bit psychological, doesn't it? And that's going to be very important. Affirms who you are. Well, if you come in pregnant, you know who you are. If you come in with, you need breast cancer, a test for breast cancer, you know who you are, right? Your body, you come in there to have your body looked at. So what kind of condition would you come in to affirm who you are? See, this is all about health. Everything Planned Parenthood peddles is always about health care. But they can't call it mental health care, even though they all but admit that the health issue is nothing but mental. And that's what we're going to see as we move along. If a woman, this is just another question, if a woman or a man seeks cosmetic surgery, for instance, is that considered health care? That'd be quite a stretch, wouldn't it? But if you come in to alter your body, the body is functioning just fine. That's health care? So, gender affirming hormone therapy. Okay, again, I have to repeat, this is obviously in response to a mental concern. The body is functioning just fine as it is, right? I mean, look how happy these people are. Look how healthy they look. Okay, it kind of reminds you of those, those drug and big pharma commercials where while everybody's smiling and happy and dancing around, they're telling you how you could, vomit uncontrollably, lose controls of your bowels, have a bad reaction and die, blah, blah, but everybody's smiling. Okay, everybody here is smiling and happy. Okay, well, that's good, but this is healthcare. Now, what we have at the bottom here is informed consent is a model of care in which patients are able to access hormones during a visit with the provider, where they discuss the risks and benefits of care. No visit with a mental health professional is required. Whoa. No visit with a mental health professional is required. Well, what are they there for? So again, the body is functioning just fine. It's the mind that seems to be a problem. The body has apparently generated a consciousness that is in conflict with itself. I have met in my life at least one person who I would have to say, this was a woman trapped in a male's body. Okay. And I remember in junior high, there was this boy that was pretty much a girl. Okay. In my entire life, that's two. I'm not saying this doesn't happen. It's very curious, but then again, cancer is the body turning against itself. It's not unreasonable to think that the body could, through some confusion of chemistry, produce a consciousness that's in conflict with the very structures that produce the consciousness, the body. The body has, in fact, produced a consciousness that is in conflict with it. Now, none of these people, none of these organizations are going to say anything about, oh, the spirit reincarnated and for whatever reason chose a body, plopped into the wrong body. Okay, that's essentialism, if you haven't been in the academy. We're not going there, and they're not going there. Okay, so we take the materialist approach. The body has produced a consciousness which is in conflict with the body itself. So, again, we look at this. Happy, healthy people, smiling and giggling, gender-affirming hormone therapy. All right, there's no way to get around this. They're coming in for a mental problem, a mental, emotional problem, yet they said no psychological, no mental health referment is required. Now things take on a more sinister turn, if that wasn't sinister enough. Planned Parenthood profits big from getting kids hooked on transgender hormones through the school to clinic pipeline. Now, I want to emphasize right away, money, I do not believe, is the primary motive. I would emphasize ideology is driving this. Here again, this is the Washington Examiner. Planned Parenthood plans to infiltrate high schools. Okay, they're trying to spin it as negatively as possible, but you don't have to do that. All you have to say is Planned Parenthood plans to enter high schools. I mean, right there, that's alarming enough. Like, what the hell are they doing there? So it reads, students can walk into the clinics anytime, including during class. That's weird. You can't just walk out of class for most things. Per California law, minors can receive emergency contraception and other forms of birth control, and health care providers are not allowed to inform their parents without the minor's permission. Now, is the minor going to... I mean, what kind of a joke is that? The clinics will also train hundreds of teens to be peer advocates about, quote, safe sex and relationships, unquote. This is snitching. This is peer pressure, and will provide pregnancy counseling. Really, fellow students? Pro-life advocates believe these are thinly veiled efforts to drive more business to Planned Parenthood's abortion-providing clinics. Again, I would emphasize that's giving them actually too much credit. It's not just money. This is what I pointed out that we were aware of in Cuba, where every neighborhood has what they call the eyes, los ojos, and they first give you a warning, and then they report you to the party for any kind of counter-revolutionary activity. Right? That's what this is about. This is putting peer pressure of indoctrinated little young maniac activists in the schools. Okay, if Los Angeles School District truly cares about the health of our daughters and sons, it would not give unfettered access to our kids to an organization that directly benefits from unplanned pregnancies. That's a good point. But again, I don't think that's the main reason for being there. This move builds upon the controversial sex education framework California forced into its public schools in April. Planned Parenthood helped draft and lobby for this effort, which pushes schools to teach young children about gender identity and how to perform certain types of sexual acts. What? What does Planned Parenthood have to do with this? But now you know what they're doing with their money, right? Well, it's how they became a branch of the government to start with. They lobby the government for more money to then lobby the government for more money, and then go out into the public sector and push their ideology, because this is ideology. This is socialism and social eugenics. Planned Parenthood is, at this point, a de facto government agency. Parents should be alarmed by Planned Parenthood's latest efforts to usurp the authority of the primary educators of their children and the Los Angeles school system's acquiescence. Okay, I've called this already. It's called Planned Parenthood is state parenthood. That's what we're seeing unfolding right before our eyes. It's state parenthood. The school system is part of the state. Planned Parenthood is part of the government. The state, the education system, the government, Planned Parenthood, are now taking control of your children. It's going to get worse. So again, we look at here in Family Watch, again, it's an antagonistic organization towards Planned Parenthood and abortion, but nonetheless, it doesn't mean that they're not accurate. All right, you have to evaluate what they say, but it doesn't mean that what they're saying isn't true just because they're antagonistic to them. So SBHCs, that's school-based health centers, that's what they're called, may supply contraceptives, gynecological exams, confidential mental health consultations, and even emergency contraception to children without parental notification. We're going to see that this mental health consultation could be these peers that they're talking about. SBHCs are designed to overcome barriers that inhibit young people from getting needed health care, including lack of confidentiality, a fear that confidentiality will not be maintained, transportation problems, fear that parents will be notified by the insurer. Oh, you mean the insurer might notify the people that are paying for it? Inconvenient appointment times. Oh my gosh, you can walk right out of your class. Costs and apprehension about discussing personal health problems. Okay, again, these are health problems. SBHCs may refer students to outside providers such as Planned Parenthood. Some SBHCs may even be run by Planned Parenthood. Well, That's actually the idea. They are run by Planned Parenthood, who has vested interest in sexualizing children to get more customers for their contraceptive abortion business. Again, I would say yes, it's a business. Yes, they're going to make money, but this is ideologically driven. Now, down here we get to something really interesting. A legal definition of an invasive physical exam is, quote, any medical examination that involves the exposure of private body parts or any act during such examination that includes incision, injection, insertion into body, but does not include a hearing, vision, or scoliosis screening. An invasive exam can be done without parental consent or knowledge. Whoa. A school-based health clinic center can perform an invasive physical exam on your child that may include a genital examination. This is really getting sinister, isn't it? Planned Parenthood offices state they only offer hormones to minors age 16 or older with parental consent, but that is not the whole truth. Well, actually, we've uncovered so many lies from Planned Parenthood that, again, what they're saying is here, that's what they ask, with all the deception that Planned Parenthood has already done. And of course, why do they do it? Because they can. They're basically government agencies working with the school system, which is run by the teachers union. All right, so they're all ideologically in line. So it's just California. It's not just California. 33 states plus DC have laws that to some degree allow minors to obtain routine health care without parental consent, blah, blah, blah. But here's the part I really want to read about this particular article. All of this is deeply troubling. Despite Planned Parenthood's deceptive marketing, transition is not proven to be the best medical practice. We know that 88 to 98% of gender dysphoric kids will reconcile with their biological sex if allowed to go through puberty untreated. Moreover, those who do transition are estimated to be 19 times more likely to commit suicide than their peers. Now, even if this is exaggerated, 19, even twice as likely, 3 times, 4 times, this is going down a path of insanity. So, what kind of people then are in charge of Planned Parenthood? Well, here's Laura Mayers. She's Chief Executive Officer of Planned Parenthood of Metropolitan Washington, D.C. So what does she do? Well, her education is the University of Albany, SUNY. Okay, if anybody knows about that school, it's massively leftist. The State University of New York at Buffalo and the University at Buffalo. Qualifications. What are her qualifications? Public speaking. Okay. Nonprofits. Strategic planning. Here's the board of directors. I looked through them all. Not a single one of them is a doctor, medical doctor of anything. These are all activists. All of them. The board of directors are all activists, just like the lady is. Laura Mayers is an activist. She works for nonprofits, of course, of leftist nonprofits. What else? She's a strategic planner. For what? For socialist ideology. What else? These are all progressive liberals. These are all socialist activists. Why are they running healthcare organizations, much less organizations that will be advising your kids on what sex they are or are not, and what kind of surgical operations on their sex organs might be done, and what chemical injections they might be taking? Okay, so we get here, this is an organization called Independent Women's Forum. Obviously, it's not a leftist organization. Public school mental health professionals deceive mom to secretly affirm daughter. I mean, but it's not a one case. If you look at these videos, and you can go to their website. This one is on Family Watch. Let's see if that was Independent Women's Forum. And then you go to Family Watch. All of these videos, these are all sad stories. There's tons of them. The literature is full of failed gender-affirming hormone therapy and, of course, the surgical part. But you don't have to even go there. You can go all over the internet to find that the failures are everywhere, and they're devastating. But it's going to get worse, much worse. Transgender kids could get hormone therapy at earlier ages. I want you to take a look at the ages that we're talking about. What is this kid? I don't know, 9, 10, 11 at the most? Look at this little girl. This is crazy. How old do you think she is? It's pathetic. Transgender kids could get hormone therapy at earlier ages. The word monstrous comes to mind, right? But there's another one I'll be coming up with. So, and let's look through that again. Take a look. Take a look. Do you see that? Do you see what kind of ages we're talking about? This little kid here can't be 8 or 9 years old. I mean, more than that. This one could be 11 or 12 at the most. At the most. Probably more like 9 or 10. This girl's got to be 8, 9, 10 at the most. So who is a key operator in this lovely scenario? Stephen M. Rosenthal. Now, this guy is a real work. This guy is a real piece of art. Transgender kids could get hormone therapy at earlier ages. He's featured in that same documentary, or I don't know if it's long enough to call documentary, but expose. That's him there. Do you see about how old the girl he's talking to must be? Or guy, if he's whatever. Looks like a girl so far. Dr. Stephen M. Rosenthal is founder and medical director of the multidisciplinary at the course University of California, San Francisco. Where else? But he is in pediatric endocrine society. Rosenthal has served as a blah blah blah. He's got a lot of credentials. He's definitely a surgeon, pediatrics, endocrine. He's covered all the bases. So we got to give him credit for that. He's the only guy I've come across so far in the work that I've done that's actually a doctor or a psychiatrist, and very qualified. And he likes figure skating. That's Ducky. So, anyways, that's him again. I put the circle around him in that expose, that report, whatever. Now, I want you to look at this girl's face again. How old is that girl? How old is the girl this guy's talking to? You can't see it probably because it's not big enough, but he is just so eager. He's just looking at her like he's just so happy. He's so eager. He's so enthusiastic. The gleeful and enthusiastic look on Dr. Rosenthal's face. He was enthused at the prospect of injecting chemicals into and mutilating the body of a perfectly healthy child. A little girl like that one. He's gleeful. He's enthusiastic. He's going to shoot her up with chemicals, and he's going to butcher her body. And he's going to call it healthcare. She's fine. Can you imagine that there's clinics for children with cancer and things like that? And these girls are going to come in there and get butchered by this maniac? Wait to see what he says. These kids have a very high risk of depression, substance abuse, suicidal thoughts, and suicidal attempts. Not treating is not a neutral option. So if you're against this, if you think you should even pause, you're anti something. They've got a name for you. Now again, didn't Planned Parenthood and the SBAC advertise that no mental health evaluation was required? So what is Rosenthal basing these statistics on? Well, obviously, his own work. And I'm saying he doesn't even see it. He's making this up. You're trying to tell me that children that young have suicidal thoughts? What is he? Or he's anticipating that they will have it. Because we all know when we were little rascals like that, we're little learning machines, we're little eager beavers. I mean, we're running around at 1,000,000 miles an hour. We run ourselves till we just fall down exhausted. Okay, so no child I ever knew in my entire life has ever had depression. Suicidal thoughts? What is this maniac talking about? He's admitting, though, if you read this, it's high risk of depression, substance abuse, suicidal thoughts, and suicide attempts. Okay, these aren't health issues. These are mental health issues. He's admitting it's a mental, emotional problem. Okay, so I want to go back to that earlier slide. 88 to 98% of gender dysphoric kids will reconcile with their biological sex. Let's say it's half that. I don't know. I trust the source, but okay, it's pretty high. Right? Growing up in rock and roll, we'd go to after-hour clubs, and some of them were frequented by a whole lot of drag queens and things. I don't know what percentage of the population that is, but they seem to be doing just fine. Were they suicidal? Would they have gone to this 50 years ago? I don't know. Some would. But 88 to 98% of gender dysphoric kids will reconcile with their biological sex if allowed to go through puberty untreated. Moreover, those who do transition are estimated to be 19 times more likely to commit suicide than their peers. All I can tell you is that the horror stories and the statistics, and they go way back to some botched early attempts, suicide among people that have gone through these kinds of procedures is commonplace. So go back to that little girl. Is he serious? He's going to butcher her body and shoot her up with chemistry because he's betting that she'll commit suicide later on in life if he doesn't? Wow. Okay, so here's my horse girl story. When I was 12 years old, I was in Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela. And across the street lived this girl. She was about my age, about 12 years old. And she had this obsession with horses. I mean, it was crazy. She had all these little shoe boxes, each one with a horse, and she'd give them hay and change their hay. But it went way beyond that. She loved to play as though she were a horse. And she loved to get us to, like, she could round us up and she would teach us how to gallop, how to trot, how to snort, how to stamp our foot. And then we'd run around the house, the yard, and she'd say, okay, now trot, or now gallop. And she had a couple of other paces in there. I remember, canter. Yeah, she even taught us how to canter. So she really loved the idea of being a horse. Now, just imagine, had some maniac like Rosenthal sat down with her and said, do you feel that you really are a horse? Yes, doctor, I think I could. I think I am, or at least sometimes. And then he could go, well, maybe deep down inside you are a horse. Do you feel that way sometimes? Yeah, Dr. Rosenthal, sometimes I feel like I really am a horse. Well, Susie, maybe you are a horse. Really, doctor? Can you imagine this conversation taking place? And then this maniac is going to talk her into undergoing chemical butchering, physical butchering. And you could imagine that this hysteria was going around to the society, that even her parents were so stupefied with this nonsense that they actually went along with it. Now, I realize this is very extreme, but I'm talking about the impressionability of children. Children. This girl wanted to be a horse. I'm pretty sure she outgrew it. I'm pretty sure she didn't have suicidal thoughts when she got older. This is really, really crazy. So let's look at this, in a kind of logical way. Like with any other ailment, why would you not take the least invasive treatment first? So as we said, we have a body that in some cases, it's probably true. We have a body that has in fact produced a mind that is at odds, in conflict with the very body that produced it. That's not so far-fetched. Again, I use the metaphor or the simile of cancer, right? The body produces cells that are actually self-destructive and end up destroying the body. So can the body produce a mind that is in conflict with itself, with its own body? Okay, it's got to be rare, but all right, we can go with that. So you have two choices. You can treat the mind and see if you can get results that way. It's a lot cheaper. It's a lot less invasive. It's definitely at least worth trying that way first, rather than butchering the body, shooting up with hormones, and to say to do it to a child, that's beyond. Even with an adult, it would be far more intelligent to first go the mental, emotional therapy route. Right? This is just basic common sense, which of course we know is an enemy of socialism, as Gramsci made clear. So that's the humane, intelligent way to start. It would be worth it by far to at least try the mind try to therapy mind and emotions. And in extreme cases, and we're going to go look at one, okay, finally go do the body, butcher it up, take the hormones and hope for the best. So look at the case of Caitlyn Jenner, for instance. All right, Bruce was an adult fully aware of what the procedure entailed. He never contemplated suicide that I know of. He was just fine. But he made an informed decision for whatever personal reasons to have the procedure. Nonetheless, she will never be fertile. She will never give birth. She represents a small, even tiny proportion of the population. Nonetheless, she deserves to follow her own destiny. So we had safe, legal, and rare for abortion, right? What that turned into was an abortion industry. Are we now witnessing an emerging trajectory similar to that which happened with abortion? It sure as hell looks that way. What else could they be preparing us for? Why would Planned Parenthood be in all of these schools? Why are all these hospitals going along with this? So Caitlyn Jenner is far from the abomination occurring in our schools and children's hospitals. Young children are lured into their own fantasies, or maybe it's the fantasies of their teachers, of their so-called healthcare providers, right? Who's having the fantasy? The child may have had something like that, maybe more serious than others. It's a case-by-case, you'd have to look at it case by case, but the child obviously is having fantasies. You could say they're real, but the healthcare provider is using that to lure them into this procedure. It's got a proven track record of regrets and suicides. So where is the health advantage? Where is the healthcare part of this? There isn't any. Caitlyn Jenner did this late in life as a full adult, and hopefully it works out fine with her. But look at that child. That's an abomination. To do that to this child is an abomination. So does it get worse? Of course it does. Banning transgender conversion practices. What? What did we just discuss? Isn't the most humane, intelligent thing to do is to give them therapy first? And yeah, that would be conversion. Try to convince them that, no, you're in the right body. You just got to adjust to it. Call that conversion? Okay, call it whatever you like. Banning transgender conversion practices means banning the emotional, mental therapy that you should definitely try first before mutilating and butchering the body, right? This is just common sense, but they're banning it. What? They already have anti-conversion therapy laws in various states of the United States already. President Biden's executive order to develop guidance to block federal funding for conversion therapy is fantastic news. Fantastic news for a nation of maniacs, maybe. I have been fighting to ban conversion therapy since my California State House days, and this week's news is a gigantic step forward in this effort. Blah, blah, blah. LGBTQ community, blah, 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 blah. Ted Lieu, whoever that is. The government is banning a therapy that could spare people from the abomination of butchering their bodies permanently. But that is being encouraged. Butchering the body is being encouraged. Shooting them up with hormones is being encouraged, and it's even going into our schools. And it's being funded and directed by an organization, Planned Parenthood, that is in fact, for all purposes, a government agency. And the president signs an executive order? If you ban conversion therapy, they can call conversion therapy any talk whatsoever about, no, you're in the right body. Just because you saw some crazy videos or, you got some peer pressure at school. No, we're not going to go hack you up in parts and give you drugs. No, we're not going to do it. And you can do it nicer. You should think about this. Blah, 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 right? They're going to ban that. They're going to ban whoever's working in that clinic in the school from giving any other alternative except for deciding whether or not to shoot them up and cut them up. And of course, the incentives to do just that are there because that's why they're there. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what I call an abomination. So remember Pelosi. Pelosi was ever so proud of the law that she passed. If a student self-identifies as another gender, it's illegal to deny them the female sports participation. In other words, to participate in female sports. Right? This is similar to what Biden just did. What they're saying is if the person self-identifies, a high school kid just self-identifies, the government will cut the funding of any school that doesn't let him go participate in the girls' sport and become a girl, so he can go to the girls' bathrooms. No psychological referral is required for this. We saw what's already happened, right? We saw that with a wrestler. I mean, he's a wrestler, right? He wants to throw the girls around the floor because he was not a very good wrestler with the guys. But then we also have the Virginia rape in the bathroom story. A guy self-identified as a girl, therefore he could go into the girls' bathroom. He went in there and he raped a girl. The school board and the school system hid the fact and sent him to another school where he did the same thing. The father of one of the girls was so furious that when you saw all those things going on the TV about critical race theory, he's actually the father that was grabbed and thrown down to the ground and taken out in handcuffs. And then they labeled him a terrorist, a domestic terrorist. He was the father of that girl, the one that got raped, the first one. And the school covered it up and sent the guy to another school. The father, for going in there and voicing it, vehemently voicing it, as he should have. Hell, I would have done way more than that. I'm sorry. There's a time and place to, well, we won't say it here. They labeled him a terrorist, along with all the other people there complaining about critical race theory, which we will have a good video on that because I'll show you how insidious it is. Why, when they say they're not teaching critical race theory, they're right, they're not teaching it. You don't understand critical race theory if you don't understand that you don't teach it. Again, I digress. Now, women are being effaced, and we talked about that in the last video. And then we have this president, the same president that appointed her or nominated her, was the same guy that told a black man he wasn't black if he didn't know who he was voting for. So the woman then was, first of all, could not define what a woman was, even though that's half the reason that she got nominated. And she got nominated by a president who says he nominated her because she was black. But he told another black person, you're not black unless you're politically black. You can see this, right? The social construction of reality, the social construction of identity. It's the political construction. You change the word social for political, and then it makes sense. It's the political construction of reality, which means propaganda and truth are interchangeable. It's the political construction of identity. In other words, you are what we, the state, say you are. If you don't agree, if you don't go along with it, we'll send you someplace. Hopefully you'll figure out who you are there, if you ever come back. It was called the Gulag Archipelago in Russia. I'm going to do a video about women in Sweden, which is, you're going to be shocked. So again, we have safe, legal, and rare. But yet we have an abortion industry, right? Abortion was billed as it would be safe, legal, and rare. But we now have an abortion industry. And we are now seeing the potential emergence of a transgender industry. In fact, I would say it's here. Abortion has done little for women in general. I went through all that in my last videos. When I say, in what way did abortion serve to improve the reproductive health of women? The answer is nothing. It didn't. Abortion has done nothing for society as a whole. Abortion was a tool of Planned Parenthood. They used it to become a government agency, and they succeeded. Now, women as a category, are no longer useful. So they're being thrown under the bus, and we've seen that with women's sports, and we're going to see it in many other areas. Transgender is the new healthcare issue. So, summary one, the biological front. Under the umbrella of various social and personal healthcare concerns, hormone therapies and that alter the body's chemistry are promoted. These chemicals alter the biology, but also the emotions, which in turn affects the mental states of the subjects. We in the music field of anthropology, there's a fellow named Damasio, Antonio Damasio. And what he found out was that if you cut the emotional centers of the brain, if you deaden them, there's no consciousness. In other words, there's no floating intellect within an emotional vacuum. The emotions are what create consciousness. These hormones run rampant on the emotions. So you're changing their consciousness. Are you depleting consciousness with this? That'd be an interesting study right there, wouldn't it? Are they becoming less conscious? Yet these subjects are in good physical health when they come in, and no psychological treatment is required. In fact, it's outlawed. People, this is way more than sinister. Transgender surgeries are promoted. Permanent body mutilation, permanent chemical sterilization or castration, and infertility. These practices are now being institutionalized in our school systems. Children are now being encouraged to undergo these procedures. Furthermore, a transgender industry seems to be in the making. People, what do you think this is going to look like 30 years from now? Summary 2, the social front. Laws have been enacted to prevent alternatives, the conversion therapy laws. Psychological treatments, as opposed to surgical or chemical treatments, are outlawed. Even though the body is not suffering from any affliction whatsoever, it is clearly the mind, the conscious self, that is in need of intervention, not the body. Resistance is stigmatized and or criminalized, i.e. what we saw in Virginia parents, designated as terrorists. Transgenderism is encouraged, normalized, and mainstreamed, starting with the public school system. Parents are being displaced from critical decision-making within the public school system. State parenthood is clearly emerging. State parenthood is what's emerging. Planned Parenthood has paved the way for state parenthood, and children seem to be the new front. But things get even more curious. So again, here we are. Abortion is healthcare. Healthcare? In what way is abortion healthcare? I mean, unless there's something wrong with the pregnancy and you have to abort. Otherwise, how is sport sex, recreational sex abortion, or recreational sex-driven abortion, the abortion industry, how does that translate into healthcare? I love someone who had an abortion. Can you imagine the fool that looks at that and goes, yeah. Jesus. Makes you doubt democracy, doesn't it? Okay, this is IPPF. That's International Planned Parenthood Forum. And IMAP is the International Medical Advisory Panel. I bet there's very few medical doctors on there, but I digress. So here we have International Planned Parenthood Forum. Did you know that existed? And so here we go. These are two marginalized, they're members of a marginalized community. Well, obviously these are, they're probably transvestites. They probably have not gone through any surgery. Anybody who has studied anthropology at all knows that this is actually very common. Most, if not all, traditional societies have a place for the transvestite, for the person who is sexually ambiguous. It's very common. We saw it in the Zuni Pueblo, where they sent to Washington, I forget when this was, about the late 1800s, early 1900s, they sent a representative to the White House, talk with the Great White Father, and they sent a transvestite, because they believe that the transvestites, the sexually ambiguous, or the ones who traverse both sexualities, both worlds, have a certain, power or charisma or whatever. When I was... I don't know if you're familiar with La Chaudrome, but probably not. In musical vignettes, they told the story of the Gypsy migrations. All right, so in there, not in the movie, but in the live performance that I saw, that was kind of like a live version of the movie. When they got to the Indian section, it was clear to me. I mean, I could see that the girl that was dancing, and one of them, there was two of them, and they were obviously guys. Maybe not obviously everybody, but there are obviously guys. They're kind of so like this, somebody might think realize the guy on the right might not. There's no stigmatism to that. Again, they have their place in society, but then all of traditional societies, you have your place. So I'm not arguing for whether or not there should be social mobility or whatever. What I'm saying is that what you're seeing right here does not mean marginalized. It does not mean that. It simply means that they exist, and they do exist, and that they exist in just about every traditional society in the world. Everybody who studied anthropology knows this. So what is this really aimed? What is this for? Who is this actually aimed at? So IPPF's goal, we'll get to that question, is to ensure that sexual and gender diversity is mainstreamed across all of our programs. That means they're going to mainstream it in the programs in all of these different countries, which means they're trying to mainstream it in the countries. Our client-centered approach recognizes that people with sexual and gender diversity have unique social, emotional, and developmental needs that require a welcoming and responsive health system, blah, 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 blah. Really? Cooperate, develop, and build networks with LGBT, blah, 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 organizations and other like-minded organizations to strengthen our capacity on sexual and gender diversity. Provide sensitive training and value clarification for all staff to ensure knowledge and acceptance. Foster an open, friendly, I mean, you can read all this. It's just the usual nonsense. What, again, does this have to do with healthcare? It sounds more like social activism. That's because it is social activism. It has nothing to do with healthcare. Who are these photos? Who are these photo ops aimed at? And to what end? What do you think this photo is intended to do? Do you think this is intended to have any effect on people? I don't want to say, I mean, it could be India, but it could be a Southeast country, it could be Thailand. I'm not sure what the brown dot is. I tried to look that up and it's not clear. Maybe it's something special for people of this caste. I don't know. Whatever. They are not marginalized. And if you look at their clothing, you can tell these aren't poor. They may be in a, looks like, I don't know, it could be a fairly poor part of town, I don't know. But they are dressed rather nicely. So, who are these photo ops intended for? Clearly, the IPPF is not so delusional as to think they will significantly change cultural norms among non-Western people. These photo ops and strategic storytelling are intended for Western consumption, for the progressive donor class. That's who this is intended for. They parade these pictures, make up some stories and narratives, throw in words like marginalized, gender diversity, and whatever. And what they do is they raise money. They raise money. Okay? Put one of those gender-affirming clinics in a school in one of these countries. Even think about mutilating one of their children and see what happens. So, interesting, is global political activism actually cultural imperialism? It's been brought up by a number of activists on the right, looking at these kind of progressive values being pushed into the rest of the world. And of course, it's because money goes with it. Is this a form of imperialism? Well, if it succeeds, yes. But they have to go through the universities first. It's got to be top down. Because ground up, hit the people at the ground level with this stuff, this nonsense, no. It will not go anywhere. This is aimed, it is cultural imperialism, but it's aimed now at the donor class here in the West. So here we get again this term. What exactly is a sexual right? In November 2006, IPPF's highest decision-making body, the Governing Council, created a panel on sexual rights with a mandate to guide and support the Federation in developing a declaration of sexual rights. Do they think they're going to influence these people through rhetoric? No. No. Sexual rights will have to be imposed top-down. Do they think they're going to go to Saudi Arabia and force what they call sexual rights? Do they think they're going to have transgender clinics in Saudi schools? In the Congo? In Malaysia? Are they kidding? Who will enforce these sexual rights against traditional and religious norms? The only way to do this is through some kind of fascist government. And it would have to be rather brutal. Planned Parenthood welcomes adoption of declaration at the UN's Commission on Population and Development. So here we go. Planned Parenthood is involved with the United Nations. Really? Here they do the Planned Parenthood welcomes the adoption of the political declaration. It's a follow-up on what I just read. 52nd Commission on Population Development to reaffirm the ICPD program of action. This critical human rights agreement emerged from the International Conference on Population Development, that's ICPD, held in 1994 in Cairo, Egypt. Can you imagine 1994, Cairo, Egypt? Okay. What Egyptians do you suppose knew anything about this? Probably outside the American University in Cairo and maybe some diplomats. I would imagine nobody. Oh, some teachers, some Marxist activists. Other than that, do you think the Egyptian population in general knew about this? Of course not. Statement from Caitlin Horrigan, Director of Advocacy of Planned Parenthood. Andrew Bremberg. Okay, there's a fellow named Andrew Bremberg would not only obstruct but actively work to take away and undermine the rights of women, the LGBTQ community, and immigrants, the very communities that face the greatest barriers to sexual and reproductive health, rights, and justice. Okay, so now they got immigrants in here. Ooh, wait a minute. Immigrants? Planned Parenthood now has something to do with immigrants. So this is curious. Planned Parenthood also has opinions on who should be ambassador to the United Nations. Really? And how did immigration get into this conversation? Does Planned Parenthood have activist opinions on immigration? Global immigration? Why would that be? Here it is. Sex ed is a vehicle for social change, full stop. I wonder what kind of social change they're promoting. What do you think? Do you think this is grassroots populist? Anti-globalism? Anti the new emerging global fascism? Do you think that's what it is? Make America great again? Matteo Salvini? Alternative for Deutschland? No, we know exactly what this is. And here we really see it. I mean, I know you saw it coming, everyone. Sex ed is for social change. Oh, good. Okay. Reproductive justice. Okay, what is that? LGBTQ, blah, blah, ad infinitum equality. Sexual violence prevention. Now remember, who covered up the Virginia incident when they allowed a guy to just say he was a girl? He goes in the bathroom, rapes a girl. They covered up and sent him to another school, and they labeled the father a terrorist. Who do you suppose that was? Do you think those were social progressives? Do you think these people are progressives? Of course they are. It's the same people. The same people bringing in Muslim migrations, as I talked about in the last video, which is not necessarily a slur against Islam, but they definitely have different values. And when you slam them into a Western country with the way women behave, the way men behave, what did you expect? I pointed that out in the last video. The violence against women is astronomical in these countries. Is that what these people are talking about? Sekas? No, of course not. Gender equity, whatever that means. Dismantling white supremacy. Drum roll. Fanfare. You saw that coming, right? Dismantling white supremacy. So Planned Parenthood, or the derivatives, are now involved in dismantling white supremacy. Who'd have guessed, huh? Was that a surprise to any of you? This is the history of Sekas, and again, formed by this lady, Mariel Calderon, medical director. She was at Planned Parenthood. It's an offshoot of Planned Parenthood. Okay, did you see this one coming? Climate crisis and healthcare. People, is this predictable or what? How did we get to climate from gender-affirming therapy and child transsexualism? Climate crisis and healthcare. Access to food and water or lack thereof in the globe as the globe gets warmer have real consequences, she argues. This is a lady named Maroso. She's an activist, been an activist for so-called feminism and really involved with the sexual aspects. Like, she's not exactly Planned Parenthood, but she's very associated with Planned Parenthood activities. The climate crisis threatens not just people's health, but also personal wealth. The price of basic necessities can easily soar beyond modest budgets when local resources are scarce. Well, how about that? So yeah, cut off the oil. The issue of resources and access to basic health needs are not dissimilar to the concerns Barroso has been hearing from women across the globe for decades. You've been hearing climate for decades from women across the globe, really? But in the era of real-time climate change crisis, women's reproductive health and rights are presented with a new hurdle, a transforming environment. Really. If we're not poor, we have more opportunities to adapt to a new climate, she says. People who are concerned with reproductive rights and reproductive health of those left behind should be engaged in the fight against climate change. So now we've got women's issue, reproductive rights, again, whatever the hell that is. We have the whole basket, the whole quagmire thrown in now with climate change as well. So we got white supremacy in there, and now we got climate change. If you're fighting for women's reproductive health, reproductive justice, again, whatever those things mean, you must fight for climate change. You must fight for global fascism. The climate change, those of you not familiar with the ESG is what I was saying when I did my series, still incomplete, but on cryptocurrencies. Whoever controls the means of exchange controls the means of production. What is ESG? ESG, environmental, social governance. Who is imposing ESG? The people who control the money. The major hedge fund operators. BlackRock, run by a Mr. Fink. They're the ones pushing the ESG into all the corporate sectors. And now people, even on Fox, on mainstream Fox, are realizing that what they're doing is they are taking control of the means of production by taking control first of the energy. They take control of the energy by pushing everybody who's not already in conformity. They strangle them. They push them out by strangling them, by cutting off the money supply. They can't borrow money. They have to conform to the ESG standards set by the money handlers, set by the people controlling the means of exchange. So now the energy people and the means of production people, because the means of production people have to also go by these standards. So they're controlling them, and they're pushing out those that would resist. They're getting squeezed so hard that eventually they're probably going to capitulate. And that's why you're seeing in so many areas, the CEOs, they're capitulating and they're going along with this because they can't get money. They can't borrow money. The money supply is being controlled. It's not just the U.S. government and the Fed. It's these massive hedge fund organizations like Fink's BlackRock. They're the ones pushing the ESG just as strong or stronger than the government. So, what is IPPF? Right? International Planned Parenthood Forum, Planned Parenthood, seek us advocating for in the political sector. Immigration, climate change crisis, anti-white supremacy, sexual, social justice, abortion, transgenderism, etc., diversity, cultural, I call it cultural dilution. Interesting. What well-known entities does this agenda neatly align with? Just coincidentally. The Democratic Party, the USA, Green Party in Europe, all global socialist parties, European Union, United Nations, World Economic Forum. So what kind of professionals work for PP and IPPF? A small handful of actual medical doctors. The vast majority are political activists with long resumes of working in leftist NGOs and government agencies. That's odd, isn't it? Well, not really. They're activists. Has nothing to do with healthcare. These organizations claim they are providing healthcare. They justify all of their work, both domestically and globally, behind the term healthcare, constantly, both in imagery and rhetoric. In other words, doing the photo ops and doing the narratives. So why are there so few medical practitioners involved? Why are the vast majority of employees at every level political activists? Well, just answer the question. Of course they are. Okay, so Planned Parenthood and International Planned Parenthood, they are demonstrably eugenics projects. But what kind of eugenics project? They're acting on both fronts, right? The social and the biological. They are completely administrative, top-down projects. Because they're obviously, this is socialism. This is a socialist state eugenics. There are not millions of people clamoring for their services. That's obvious. No, there's not. There's not millions of people out there having this transgender crisis. There's not millions of people having half the problems that they're talking about. Those narratives, as I said, and those photo ops are intended for the donor class here in the West. Yet they are funded as though there were millions of people clamoring for their services. And they are globally active. And they're funded massively. So they are obviously socialist eugenics projects. They're top down, obviously. So what kind of human are they attempting to engineer? This is where we get back to the original question. And specifically, what kind of biological human? Because that's what they're doing. What is this better human or simply new human that they are aspiring to? Well, the question is, are they aspiring to a better human? Maybe a new human, but better? Is it better or worse than traditional cultural eugenics? That's our question. So we've looked at their fruits, right? That's what we've been doing. We've looked not just at their methods, but their results. The fruits thus far, they have lied egregiously about the efficacy and the results of their abortion and transgenderism work. That's for sure. They've lied about both of them. We have an abortion industry now, not safe, legal, and rare, and we're now entering into a transgender industry, which in no way can possibly be benefiting the public. They are now, despite those horrific results, determined to institutionalize these abortion and transgenderism procedures into the school system. They are lowering the permissible age limit to that of mere children. Children. They are maneuvering to keep the procedures from parental scrutiny. They are in fact attempting to replace the parents, both at the educational level, what's taught in the schools in general, and at the biological level, in order to conduct these procedures without parental consent. This is obvious. It's what they're doing. It's right in front of us. So again, the fruits. They are making it illegal for parents and the rest of society to block their activities at any level. The conversion therapy thing. No, you can't do the obvious intelligent thing of actually trying to give them therapy, talk to them. It's a mental, emotional issue, obviously. No, they're going straight for the butchering. They are spreading this to as much of the world as possible, but that is largely a publicity hoax provided to the liberal donor classes in order to encourage more funding. They are actually concentrating their real efforts in the Western world, the Europeans, and peoples of European descent wherever they are. Hence, they got the white supremacy, dismantling the white supremacy issue in there. So now we ask, a healthier human society, right? Healthcare. If the purpose of healthcare is not to create a healthier society, what's its purpose? Or really, should it be called healthcare? Virility and fertility are the bedrock of human survival, as it is with any species. The fully transitioned transsexual is always sterile and infertile. The fully transitioned transsexual is always sterile and infertile. The trans woman can never be fertile. The trans woman is a feminized male that can, at best, pass for being a woman. But it will not bear children. It will not. The trans male will always be sterile. The trans male will rarely be as strong as a natural male. In other words, the strongest of the trans males, that is, you pump them up with enough hormones, they exercise or work out enough, they'll be as strong as a weaker male, maybe an average male. It's about the best it'll ever be. In what way is this healthcare? If this becomes an industry, we are producing infertile and sterile humans who were previous to this transition perfectly healthy. How is this healthcare? But we still don't know. What kind of human is Planned Parenthood and all the institutions affiliated and aligned with it attempting to engineer? So far, it looks absolutely abominable. Mutilating and sterilizing children irreparably is the best case for the use of the word abomination, perhaps ever in human history. That's the fruits so far, an abomination. How is it that the Democratic Party, USA, every liberal party throughout the Western world, the EU, and the United Nations, how is it they are supporting this abomination? We have to ask again, what is the objective here? What is this humanity that is being aspired to? Because that's what eugenics does. It aspires to a humanity, a new human, altered human, but something of a human evolution, self-guided evolution. So it has an objective of some kind. What are the characteristics and virtues of this human that they're trying to create, engineer? That's the million-dollar question. So, I've concluded, you can draw your own conclusions. The fruits of their actions thus far is an abomination. I can't say I honestly know what they're trying to engineer, what they're trying to produce, but so far, it's an abomination. So, are they deliberately poisoning and destroying massive parts of the human race, especially in the West, which is where they're concentrating this abomination? Okay, that's an issue. I don't know the answer, but it smells worse than rotten. How does immigration play into the fruits of their labor? You saw that they brought that in. They brought in climate. They brought in the white supremacy, all the usual. But immigration has a very special place in this. And that will be the subject of part 4 of my Useless Eaters. So how about hashtag abort Planned Parenthood? I like that.